Hello everybody, this is John from Clark's Bees and Such, and this is our first video on the Basic Beekeeping for Beginners course. This is lesson number 1, or session number 1, Understanding the Bees. Now I apologize, I am in my wood shop, it's rainy, it's cold outside. We don't want to go outside right now and do anything outside, and it's too cold to go in the bee barn where it's not heated. So I am in my wood shop. It's going to be more or less a lecture style presentation. I don't know how to make this any more enjoyable, any more interactive than this. But I think it's important for brand new beekeepers to understand some basic knowledge of the bees. Before you get heavily involved in anything, you need to understand a few things. Number one, honeybees, they can sting you, right? So if you're worried and fearful of bees, maybe beekeeping's not right for you. I do know several people who have extreme allergies to bees, and they are beekeepers. So even people who don't like to get stung can still be beekeepers and survive and enjoy the hobby. But here we go. A couple things you need to know about honeybees. Number one, there are primarily three types of bees in a hive. And that's the queen bee, that's the worker bees, and that's the drone. Now I'll show you a couple images from these different types of bees, and they're going to be from a Man Lake catalog. Man Lake is not a sponsor, at least not yet. But we're going to show you some images from the Man Lake catalog. One of the things, if you're a brand new beekeeper, you may be interested in picking up a catalog. This is the most recent one they sent to me recently. It's a 2022 master catalog for Man Lake. There you go. And really early on, they've got the roles of the honeybees. So I'll take a close-up picture for you, and you can see that. But there's some images for the honeybees. You got the queen bee, of course, the worker bees, and the drone bees. Now, on average, the life cycle of a bee, the bees go through metamorphosis. There's basically 3 stages that a bee passes through before becoming an adult. You got the egg, you got the larvae, and then finally it becomes a pupa, right? And so then it comes out as an adult. Where the eggs are laid and capped over, we call that brood. Brood are basically baby bees, right? Those are the bees that have not yet emerged from their cells. So if you hear the term brood, I want you to understand what that means as we talk about brood. In terms of from egg to total adult, okay? From the time the egg was laid, it takes about 16 days for a new queen to emerge, okay? The workers are on average between 18 and 22 days, maybe say 21. But worker bees, from the time that the egg's laid until they emerge, it's approximately anywhere between 18 and 22 days. And for a drone, now drones are the male bees, it takes about 24 days. I think we all understand, or at least I hope you know by now, what a queen bee is. Queen is the mom of the colony, right? The queen she's the queen. She lays all the eggs, at least all the fertile eggs. She lays all the eggs, and from there you get the new worker bees and you get the new drone bees, okay? Worker bees are just, as the name implies, they're the ones that do all the work. The queen bee, once she is mated and comes back to the hive, doesn't typically leave again unless she swarms, and we'll talk about that in a different session. But the queen bee, you have to have a queen. Without a queen, you really don't have a colony. You have to have a queen. Okay, you have to have worker bees. Worker bees take care of the queen bee. Worker bees take care of all other jobs, which we'll mention here in a few minutes. And then you have drones. Now, drone bees are the boys. And in case you didn't know this, drone bees do not have a stinger. Drone bees also do not work. Drone bees are really created for one reason and one reason only, and that's to breed. Once they breed, they die. They actually die immediately following the process of breeding. So drones' sole purpose in life is to eat and breed. And once they breed, it's over with. If there's no reason for the drones to breed, the worker bees will kick the drones out of the house. I mean, if they're not working, they're just sitting there eating, using their resources, and the worker bees will eventually kick them out, especially toward the fall when there's really no purpose to have the drones and keep them alive over wintertime. So that's the 3 things. Drones are larger in shape, big fat bees with no stingers. So if you see a big fat bee with no stinger, they're great to pick up. Worker bees will sting. Queen bees also have a stinger, but typically you're never going to get stung by a queen. The queen uses that stinger to take out other potential queens in the hive to make sure that, it's kind of like the Highlander, there can be only one, right? So That's not necessarily entirely true. Sometimes you can have more than one queen, but typically speaking, the queen will make sure there's no competition in that hive, and she'll take the other queens out. So those are the three primary things I want you to understand about the bees. Now, worker bees, we talk about worker bees, it's just like being a human being. We're born, eventually we crawl, eventually we walk, eventually we run. Sometimes we go to schools, we get an education as we get older. And so as you get older, you get passed out to different duties and different tasks. So when a bee first emerges, days 1 and 2, they'll be housekeepers. They're going to start working. They're going to clean up the cell that they were born in. They're going to keep the rest of the brood nest warm. The other baby bees, they'll keep them warm. Days 3 to 5 of their life, they'll be nurse bees. They're going to start feeding the older larvae and taking care of the older larvae there. 6 to 11 days, they're still nurse bees, and they'll start feeding the youngest larvae. Around days 12 to 17, the worker bees then will become workers, true workers, where they'll produce wax, they'll carry food, they'll build comb. Sometimes they'll have to do funeral details, undertaker details, where they actually help toss out the dead bees, get the dead bees out of the hive and clean up the hive. Days 18 to 21 approximately, they're on guard duty. They'll be on guard duty out front of the hive, making sure that no other stray bees are coming in, no hornets are coming in. They'll take care of whatever they can up front and protect the colony. And days 22 to the end of their life, approximately, they're going to be field bees. Now, I said to the end of their life. So field bees, foragers, they're going to go out and get pollen, go out and get nectar, go out and rob other hives sometimes. When I say end of their life, bees don't really live a long time. Typically, your worker bees can live approximately 40 days in the summer in the heat of everything. Over the winter months, they can live a little bit longer, 4 months, give or take, somewhere around there. They'll live certainly longer in the wintertime than they do in the spring, where they're working and they're active, and they're flying everywhere. They just get worn out. They get worn out and they die. And sometimes they come back with some honey, with some wax, whatever, propolis, back to the hive, and they die. Old age just kills them. So that's when you have the younger bees will kick them out of the hive and just toss them off the edge so that they're no longer in the hive. Drones, again, once they get mated, they don't have a stinger. Now, here's something I want everyone to understand about bees. And it's a common misconception for people who've never had bees before. When you see bees and you think, well, that's a bee. Well, obvious, okay? I'm a person, you're a person. Or as I like to say, I'm a people, you're a people, right? We think in terms of people and in terms of, persons. As a person, I can live by myself. Bees don't think of themselves as bees. Bees think of themselves as a colony. It's one large group of bees. A single bee on its own cannot survive. If you have no queen, you can't have a colony. And if the queen doesn't have other bees to take care of her, she's going to die. So a single bee by itself cannot survive. So bees, instead of, I'm a people, you're a people, I'm a bee, you're a bee, instead of that thought, it's more like I'm a cell. A bee is a cell of a living organism called a colony. Okay, we all have cells in our bodies, right? We've got red blood cells, we've got white blood cells, we got cancerous cells, we got all kinds of cells. I don't know what all kinds of cells we have. I'm not a doctor by any stretch, but bees all view themselves as one living unit. So instead of a single bee being a bee, the single bee kind of views himself as a cell. It's an organism, part of a larger body. That's very important as we start going through the process and we start doing hive inspections and you look at the bees and the different duties that they're doing. Understand that the bees are going to do what they think is in the best interest of the overall body. Sometimes you have cancerous cells in the body and those bees will kick them out. They'll get rid of them. Sometimes you have cancer cells, whatever the case may be, they want to take care of the colony and protect. Bees, unlike other insects that we have in this world, will not sting you for the fun of it. Okay, these are not like yellow jackets. They're not like, ground hornets or whatever they're called that'll fly at you and just sting you just for fun. A bee's only going to sting you if it feels that the whole colony is threatened. Or maybe its own individual cell, its own individual life may be threatened. But honeybees don't want to sting you. Once they sting you, they die. And so they don't want to commit hara-kiri by stinging you if they don't have to. If they feel that the hive's threatened, yes, they're going to protect that body with everything they can. They're going to protect that colony with everything they can. But they're not going to sting you just for the sheer fun of it. When you walk by a honeybee hive, when you see honeybees out in nature flying around, don't worry about getting stung. odds are they're not going to do it. Now, if you go up and pick them up and grab them, yeah, okay, the likelihood of you getting stung is probably greater. It's increased. But if you see a honeybee flying around on a flower, collecting nectar, pollen, whatever, it's not going to sting you. It's just doing its job, and it wants to get back to the colony as soon as it can with the resources that it's bringing in. So honeybees are not prone to sting you. They're a very friendly creature, but they do sting. So be aware. They will sting. In terms of the cells, we talked about the colony. In terms of the colony, sometimes things get bad. Maybe the queen's getting older, queen's no longer producing, and they will start to build swarm cells. We'll talk about that later. It's certainly in the vocabulary section. Sometimes the bees will just abscond. If there's something wrong, seriously wrong inside of that hive, that colony may just abscond, take off. Take off, say adios, we're out of here, we're going off to greener pastures, and leave. So the colony could abscond, colonies can swarm. So when a queen is born, okay, when the queen emerges and comes out of her cell, she's going to make sure there's no other queens, no other competition in the hive, in the colony, and go out and try to kill those bees if she can, those queen cells. So she'll try to go right through the queen cell and make sure she's the only one. She's a sole survivor. At that point in time, she's going to go out on a mating flight. And the queen bee, or at this point in time, we will call her a virgin queen. The virgin queen will leave the hive and take off and go to what's called a drone congregation area, a DCA, a drone congregation area. This is where all the drones hang out. And she'll go off to the drone congregation area and get bred by up to 17 different drones. And the drones will breed the queen. She'll have all these eggs inside of her body, and she will come back and make her way back to the hive. Once she makes her way back to the hive, she's not going to leave that hive again unless they swarm or abscond for some reason. So the queen will never, typically will generally not leave the hive again once she's been mated. She's going to spend the rest of her days in there, laying eggs. A normal worker bee in the spring may only live for like 40 days before that worker bee dies. A queen can live up to 2.5, 3 years, sometimes even longer. Middle age for a queen's about 1.5 years. That's what Bob Benny said at one of our conferences we've been to before. And that's probably the most productive queen, about the 1.5 years old stage. But then things start going downhill from there. So she starts laying fewer eggs, or her brood pattern's not near as good as it once was, not near as strong. So, queens can live 2 to 3 years, but she's going to spend the rest of her life in that hive unless she takes off for some reason, either as a swarm or this colony just takes off from the hive and absconds. The queen will fly up to about 1 mile away to find a drone congregation area. And the reason why I'm bringing this one out for your attention, a lot of people have asked me, John, if there's drones in the hive and the queen's in the hive, why does the virgin queen even fly out to get mated? Well, a drone bee will typically fly like 1/4 mile to up to 3/4 mile away, and that's where they're going to find their DCA, their drone congregation area. That queen bee instinctively will fly at least 1 mile out from the hive to make sure she's not breeding with her brothers. Okay, I mean, it's basically a genetic trait they have. To stop any type of inbreeding, she will generally fly farther than the drones can fly. So she's getting bred with some other drones. So if you're looking at a certain type of bee, honeybee, you want to have Russians, or you want to have Italians, or you want to have Colonies, or Saskatraz, or whatever different types of honeybees we have out there. If you think, hey, I've got the ideal setup, I've got all these bees, I'm paying all kinds of big money for queens and with great genetics. Well, the problem is if she goes out and breeds with the neighbor's bees in the next bee yard over, you may be bringing back all kinds of genetics you really don't want at your house. So odds are the drones inside the hive are not the same ones that will be mating with the queen. I just wanted you to understand that. That's how it works. We have a nice basement at our house, and I wanted to call it the man cave. And my wife got mad. She said, no, John, you're not calling it the man cave because I'm allowed to come down here. I said, okay. We won't call it the man cave anymore. We'll call it the drone congregation area. Well, she didn't like that one either. So I lost the drone congregation area argument as well. But I still refer to it as the DCA sometimes when we go down to watch movies. We're going down to the DCA. Okay, so some bee trivia for you if you didn't know these things. Number one, the honeybee is the only insect that produces food consumed by man. Now, we can eat other insects, but the honeybee, to my knowledge, my understanding, is the only insect that actually produces a food source for humans. Bees are insects, so they obviously have 6 legs. Bees can fly 15 to 20 miles an hour. Who'd have thunk that small creature can go 15 to 20 miles an hour? And a honeybee can fly up to 6 miles. So if you take a point on the map and go like a 3-mile radius around your property, your apiary, your bee yard, whatever you want to call it, that's probably the area of where those bees will fly. So any pollen source, nectar source, any other bees that are in that general area, they can be found by your bees. A queen will, on average, lay 1,500 eggs a day. So they can lay anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000. I've seen different researches or different statistics there, but let's just say on average, a queen will lay approximately 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. A bee, I already mentioned before, if a bee loses its stinger, it's going to die. So it doesn't want to sting you unless it absolutely has to protect itself or the colony. An average beehive can hold around 50,000 bees. Now, I know that 50,000 is probably a little high for most people, but 40,000 to 60,000, somewhere around there, is not out of the question. You can certainly have more, but let's just call it an average can hold 50,000 bees. It's fine. Foragers are the bees that leave the hive to go out and find the pollen, to go out and find the nectar. Foragers have to collect nectar from about 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. So if you've ever wondered when you go to the grocery store why honey is so expensive, especially if it's pure, local, raw honey, which is what I highly recommend you get, it's because those bees have to collect pollen from 2 million flowers, nectar from 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. And the average worker bee, the average forager that goes out and gets the nectar to make that honey, the average forager will only make 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey in that bee's lifetime. 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey in that bee's lifetime. Bees have 2 pairs of wings. And bees communicate primarily in the form of dances or releasing chemicals called pheromones. And we'll talk about pheromones here later on. But the bees can actually do some different types of dances. There's the waggle dance, and they'll orientation flights, and they're all kind of like in different ways. But the bees will communicate to other bees inside the hive. And I highly recommend you read some of Seeley's books. I'll link them below if you want to know more about these amazing facts and how bees communicate with one another. But to me, it's just absolutely incredible how smart the bees are and how they can tell other bees exactly by their dance inside the hive, exactly where the pollen source is, how to find it, which direction, how far it is. It's amazing that they can do that. They also spread pheromones, as we mentioned before. The bees gather 10 pounds of nectar to make 1 pound of honey. A foraging bee can carry 80% of their body weight in pollen or nectar. It takes approximately, how much do bees weigh? It takes approximately 3,500 bees to be 1 pound. So when you get a 3-pound package, if that's the way you're going to go after bees, if you're going to buy a package of bees, a 3-pound package is going to be roughly 9,500 to 10,500 bees in a 3-pound package, depending on how much the apiary puts in there for you. Bees can see the same colors we see, except for red. They don't see red, and they can see ultraviolet. So at nighttime, in case you haven't heard this before, if you ever want to go out to your bee yard at night and shine a flashlight on them, I wouldn't recommend it. They'll see that light. They could get concerned. They could get concerned that their colony, their hive is under attack. A lot of beekeepers will go in their bee yard in the evening and have the red light on a headlamp so that they can't see red. That works out well. If you're storing bees inside the house or in an observation hive, or maybe you're over-storing them in the wood shop for the wintertime, wear a red light. You'll see that a lot on some of the YouTube videos, especially up in Canada. If you look at Faith Apiaries or Ian Stepler's YouTube channels, you'll see them do that with red lights. Okay, I think that's probably one more thing. The brood nest. So the brood, the baby bees, where the bees cluster inside that hive box. If we have brood in there, they're going to cluster up and they're going to keep that brood nest around 92 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. 92 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. If the brood's gone, and that doesn't mean, by the way, that matters not, regardless of what the outdoor temperature is. If the outdoor temperature is 100 degrees, they're going to fan their wings and cool it down until it gets to the 92 to 93 degree area. If it's 40 degrees outside or 30 degrees outside, they're going to cluster up and heat that brood nest to get it to 92 to 93 degrees. If there is no brood, you're about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So the bees really regulate their temperature very well. Lots of times in the summertime, you'll see all the bees out in the front porch, just hanging there. We call that bearding, and I'll show you a couple pictures of bearding here later on. But that's pretty much how that works in terms of the bees really regulate the temperature as well as the humidity inside their hive or inside their colony. And once again, bees need a very good reason to sting. Yes, I get stung all the time when I go out and work the hives and I'm not wearing gloves, and usually it's my fault. I get a bee gets caught here and I squeeze my hand and oops, yeah, so it stung me. But they're not typically going to be aggressive bees. If you have a hive, a honeybee hive that's very aggressive, there's probably a problem there. And I would probably say, let's get a new queen in there as soon as you can. But we'll talk about that in some upcoming videos as well. So I hope you liked the introduction to understanding the bees. You've got the queen bee, you've got the worker bees, you've got the drones. Drones live about 40 days, worker bees live about 40 days. Remember, drones will live until they get kicked out or breed with a queen. And they die upon breeding. And then you get the queen bee that can live several years. Probably not the best for honey production, letting a 2 or 3 year old queen stay in there, but they can't live that long. And sometimes they can live longer. I typically don't keep my queens around that long, but they could live longer. Maybe you've got one that's lived that long. Anyway, this is the introductory video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some about just the lifestyle of the bees. And we'll see you next time on our very next episode, Beekeeping Vocabulary.